Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Our story today takes us to a restaurant chain that's named after a fruit and a flying insect. Yeah, that one. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. How would you describe this dish? Many years ago, I worked at a restaurant that's part of a national chain named after a fruit and an insect. I'd put in my 2 weeks' notice after finding a better position elsewhere, and we were about to slightly tweak our menu, and so we're having mandatory staff meetings to acquaint ourselves with the new food. The only time that we could schedule these meetings was in the morning prior to the restaurant opening so that all the staff could attend. As a closing bartender who would sometimes be there until 2 or 3 a.m. cleaning up, I did not relish having to turn around and go back to work just for an hour-long, untipped, earning just minimum wage meeting on less than 6 hours of sleep. Since I was on my way out the door and would not be employed by them when the new menu actually started, I asked my boss if I actually had to come to these meetings. He told me, if you want to work your remaining scheduled shifts, you do. Being a college student who lived paycheck to paycheck, I could not afford to lose out on a week and a half wages, so I sucked it up and went. Part of the rollout was a booklet we were supposed to fill out about the menu items, which included the prompt, "How would you describe this dish?" Presumably, you're supposed to come up with clever, tantalizing romanticizations of the items. Stuff like, it's a quarter pound of Angus beef, smothered by melted cheese and tender onions. But there were no specifics about what you could or should not write. I sat slightly out of my manager's line of sight and looked up the nutritional values of the menu items from our corporate website on my phone. I filled my notebook out as follows. The classic bacon cheeseburger has 1,320 calories, 140% of your daily saturated fat, 28 grams, and 124% of your daily sodium, 2,860 milligrams. The BS Mushroom Swiss Burger has 1,580 calories, 155% of daily recommended saturated fat, 31 grams, and 126% of your recommended sodium, 3,100 milligrams. The Quesadilla Burger has 1,580 calories, 190% of your daily saturated fat, 38 grams, and 191% of your daily recommended sodium intake, 3,470 milligrams, etc. The next day, my boss called me into the office to discuss my booklet. He asked, "Are these the real nutritional facts numbers?" I replied, "You're the manager, you should know," but yes, I pulled them right off the company website. He said something along the lines of, "God, that's disgusting. I should be looking for a new job too. We shouldn't be selling this crap." I worked the end of my shifts and then came back as a customer a week or two later. I proceeded to order a pitcher of the strongest beer we had on tap for myself and then loudly played trivia with some of the bar regulars who were my buddies, asking them the same nutritional facts about the food. The bartender, my former coworker who was a stuck-up bee, kept giving me dirty looks, but she couldn't say crap to me since I wasn't the loudest one in the group, and we weren't discussing anything vulgar. I think your manager's reaction's hilarious, but I think anyone who eats at the Fruit and Bee restaurant isn't doing it to follow a weight loss program. And our second story. Karen demands to speak to the manager of a university. Okay, so I do work at the actual location that this story takes place, however, not at the area in question. You'll see in a minute. So I work at a university as an admissions recruiter, and last summer I was walking through the building after my lunch and saw a woman wandering through the empty first floor. As soon as she saw me, she beamed over to me as fast as she could. "Excuse me, where's the Chick-fil-A?" So we have an express Chick-fil-A that's entirely student-run in one of our secondary dining halls, and while it's closed between the months of May to July, it still shows up as a location on all internet map sites for reasons we'll never know. I think you know where this is going. This was last year, so the dialogue was close to this. Me: "Oh, it's down the hall that way leading into the other building, but I'm sorry, it's closed for the summer." Lady: "Closed? But the app says open." M: "Oh, we don't have any control over what's online, but I can tell you it's closed like all other dining sites on campus." L: "Why are you telling people on Google that it's open and we come all the way down here?" M: "I'm sorry, I don't work on campus dining or Chick-fil-A, so I can't say why they mark it open. but there's a full restaurant like 5 minutes up that way. L. But I wanted to eat here. Why are you advertising somewhere that isn't open and luring us out here? You should be ashamed what you're doing. M. Again, we didn't L. Let me speak to your supervisor. I need to talk to him about your store. Store? I'm an associate admissions director. I don't have a supervisor other than the director herself, and this is definitely not something she cares to hear about. But I knew this lady had a story in her head and wasn't going away easily, so I had an idea. M. Sorry, ma'am, but I have a presentation starting soon, but I hope you find an answer to your question. I began walking back towards the office I actually answer legitimate questions at, and sure enough, this lady followed me like an angry gremlin. As I walked, I quickly texted our secretary a short brief of what was happening and then put some distance between me and Gremlin Woman as we entered the office. Secretary. Hi, ma'am. How can I help you today? Well, I'd like to complain about the terrible business practice by your restaurant, and your employee here has no skills related to the customer service industry. S, confused. I'm sorry, what restaurant? Gremlin lady proceeds to go on a tangent about us and Chick-fil-A and restaurant management, etc., and our secretary, who has 30 years of working in higher education, has the most disappointed in humanity look on her face I've ever seen. S. Ma'am, we are a university admissions office, and if you don't have questions regarding that, you can take your concerns to someone else. L. No, I want to do this here. She slammed her fist into the desk. On here. S, standing up and picking up phone. I'm going to have to call our campus police who are located across the walkway here. I'd advise if you don't want to be escorted out and possibly arrested, you should please leave our school now. As the gremlin's eyes widened a bit as she processed her next move, then she huffed and stormed out of our office. I'm not sure what happened to her exactly, but her story made for a hilarious story on our Friday meeting, and I bought our secretary a week's worth of coffee. Like in most posts in this sub, I'm baffled by people who think you're lying to them. Why on earth would an employee tell them, I don't work here, if they do? There are exactly 0 reasons to do that. And our last story. Retired lawyer neighbor called the water authorities on us. My husband and I have been managing a plant nursery for years. We lived on a large property in rural New Zealand, and for the most part, our neighbors were peaceful and respectful. But as you might expect, there was always one difficult neighbor. In this case, it was our neighbor, let's call him Kevin, who lived just down the hill from us. He had a large dam on his property and, unfortunately, too much time on his hands as he was a retired lawyer with a tendency to complain about anything and everything. One day, we received a formal letter from Kevin accusing us of contaminating his water with blue-green algae. According to him, this had caused damage to his property and even affected his horses. This wasn't the first complaint we'd received from Kevin. Every few weeks we'd hear something new, but this accusation, claiming that we were responsible for contaminating his water, took it to another level. Kevin demanded that we pay for all the damages, including his horse's veterinary bills. Needless to say, my husband and I were absolutely furious. We knew we'd been diligent in maintaining our dam. My husband had designed a natural filtration system for the water with 2 smaller dams, reed plants, and chlorinators. We regularly backwashed the water to maintain the pH balance and made sure it was well aerated. Yet, here we were being blamed for something that wasn't our fault. Naturally, we shot back with a firm no and prepared for what we knew would be an ongoing battle. But then Kevin made a huge mistake. He called WaterCare, New Zealand's water supplier, to have the water in our dam tested, thinking it would prove we were to blame. A representative from WaterCare showed up to inspect the water. He wasn't happy about being called in, especially because it was a last-minute assignment due to a colleague being unavailable. He had to handle the entire testing process himself, taking samples from all the inflows and outflows of our water system. The guy was clearly frustrated, but as I watched, I realized he was also quite impressed with our setup. I decided to have a chat with him. As a former chemistry student, I was curious about the whole process. He explained that he was testing the water's salinity, pH, and other factors to ensure it was safe. I mentioned that our neighbor was accusing us of contaminating his water, and the WaterCare employee sympathized with us. He even acknowledged how well our filtration system was working. The conversation took a surprising turn when the employee asked about the property line. I explained that a few years ago, Kevin had asked us to reinstall a fence that went through our property, and my husband had agreed, paying for the entire cost himself. The water care guy seemed intrigued by this and decided to take a sample from Kevin's side of the water boundary as well, since the water crossed over onto our property. Before he left, he smiled at me and said, "Well, I'll need to test this water too, since it's technically yours." About a month later, we were invited to a council meeting with Kevin. We knew it was going to be about the water contamination, but we had no idea how the situation was going to unfold. When the meeting started, Kevin was smugly sitting there with his lawyer. Little did we know he was about to lose the battle. The water care representative began by explaining that the contamination didn't originate from our dam, but from Kevin's dam, most likely caused by the horse manure runoff that had been seeping into the water. But that wasn't the kicker. The water care employee then revealed that while testing the water, they'd found a cubic meter of Kevin's water had crossed over into our land. This meant that the contamination was, in fact, his fault, and he was responsible for the damages. Kevin was taken aback and tried to argue that since we didn't use the contaminated water, we couldn't claim damages, but my husband and I had a different plan. My husband stood up and explained that we planned to use the water for a water garden display at our nursery, which had already been approved by the council. Our plans for the garden had been in the works for years, but we couldn't proceed with the project if the water was contaminated. With all the evidence and a clear explanation of our intentions, the council sided with us. Kevin was now responsible for fixing the contamination, which meant he had to pay for the installation of a filtration system similar to the one my husband had designed. The estimated cost? Around $20,000. To make things worse for Kevin, we learned that he was now legally required to install a filtration system similar to ours to clean his water so we could proceed with our garden. It was a costly lesson for him. After the ordeal, Kevin stopped bothering us. We were able to move forward with our nursery and water garden project. Kevin learned the hard way that messing with a family who's well-prepared and patient comes with consequences. He was forced to pay for all the necessary upgrades and repairs, and we were able to continue with our plans. From that point forward, our property was peaceful, and we never had another issue with Kevin. You know, from his decision to test that cubic meter of water, I'm pretty sure you made a day he was dreading into something fun and interesting. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.